welcome. My name's Don Moorhouse. I'm the CEO of MethodGrid, and
hello everyone, I'm Marc North. I'm the AI tech lead at MethodGrid. What we're going to talk about is also linked to the PhD that I'm currently completing at Durham University, which is about AI, specifically natural language processing interpretability.
Thank you, Marc. So, I mean, firstly, just by way of positioning, just so you understand our, I guess our sort of view on the world, our lens on the world. Who are we in terms of MethodGrid? So I would say, firstly, our client base is really focused on the sort of engineering consultancy nexus, the large, national sort of public guardians, big capital program offices, network rails of this world, and large private sector portfolio offices, the sort of, particularly in the energy renewables space. So that's kind of, that's our world. We're fundamentally a tech business. It's a platform, MethodGrid. In real summary, I would say the platform helps our clients build methodological playbooks and then use those to actually assure and deliver consistently well-applied methodology. And with every delivery iteration, the knowledge that accretes and you learn from feeds back into an ever-improving master. So that's essentially the fundamental platform. And then as an adjunct, we have a professional services team that covers a number of services. One is to help embed and build those playbooks for our clients, get them off and running. Secondly, all things to do with the sort of the people, competency, capability issues that wrap around that. And then finally, and probably most, in a growing sense for us, is the sort of AI and data practice, which is everything from sort of AI strategy, with experts such as Marc opining, all the way through to, how do we handle incoming regulation, all the way through to sort of bespoke AI, development. So that's who we are, and I say that just so we position our point of view on this. So I guess what the aim is in the next 35 minutes, and we'll leave sort of 10 minutes for Q&A as well, is to cover the following. Why do we think there's a problem statement with lessons learned in the industry now? Why it warrants trying to resolve it, why it matters. The key principles that you need to keep in mind if you're trying to sort of resolve this. Fundamentally, why the timing is really interesting now, why we feel this is an apposite moment. And then, of course, we're going to give you an overview of the solution prototype that we're looking to construct, and we'll show you a little demo as well of that. And then finally, just want to leave you with a tease of what we're calling Project Leap, which is a genuine sort of industry collaboration to really sort of meaningfully progress this prototype into hopefully a working model.
Yeah, so to kick us off, talk a bit about lessons learned as the discipline currently exists and what the issues are with it. Now, a lot of this, I'm aware, I'm kind of preaching to the choir. A lot of this is going to be familiar to anyone who's worked in project delivery. The first problem is with lessons learned capture. This tends to happen at specifically project milestones, either at the end of a project or a project stage gate. Now, the obvious problem with this is what we're talking about might have happened 6 months ago, or the relevant people might not be in the team anymore, which inevitably means we've sort of half remembered what we're trying to record and what we're trying to learn. The mirror to that is the lesson retrieval. Again, tends to happen at specific project milestones, tends to happen at the start of new projects, which again, might not be the most relevant time for us to be playing back lessons. What we're talking about might not be relevant for another 6 months. Again, relevant people might not be in the room. The quality of the lessons that get captured currently tends to be pretty poor. Again, that's partly the timing issue, but also, especially when lessons learned is a mandatory exercise, what you tend to get is a lot of just very vague, not particularly detailed or actionable lessons that people just record because they have to write something. Fourthly, there isn't really any user interfaces and tools to kind of enable lessons learned, even if you have someone who is motivated to go and find anything that is relevant to what they're currently working on. These tend to just live in documents or PDFs that sit on a SharePoint site that are difficult to find. And finally, the technology, although the technology exists that could potentially alleviate some of this, it hasn't really been utilized, and that's what we're going to kind of get into a lot today. And finally, there's the cultural and behavioral barriers. The more we've talked about lessons learned and how it can be improved, the more we've kind of realized there's a big psychological, cultural aspect to this. When you're recording a lesson, often that involves admitting a mistake, and how people respond to that in your organization within the industry potentially makes that quite a difficult thing to do. It's not necessarily encouraged. That's something that also needs to be addressed. So this is kind of a summary of this. And you can see a lot of this is kind of a mirror on both sides of this, the lessons learned capture and the lessons learned playback. So we have the motivational, the cultural issues I've just talked about, the triggers, they tend to happen at specific times rather than when it's most relevant. The quality of them varies hugely, especially when it's a mandatory exercise. There isn't really any technical interface or UI for it. And finally, there isn't a lot of categorization or intelligent tagging of lessons learned. It all just tends to sit in massive documents. It's hard to find, even if you're motivated to do so.
So why does this matter? I mean, really, really simply, fundamentally, whatever the sort of reading you would have of sort of UK PLC sort of strategic remit, clearly what a lot of this room is involved in is, programs that are genuinely right on that sort of, agenda item. So, this is, clearly paying into really material topics of work. We have to remind ourselves often that this, again, particularly in the AEC sector, again, from just a pure UK economy perspective, is huge. There's over 2 million people employed in the supply chain of, engineering construction. So this is a significant part of, the UK sort of balance sheet. And then thirdly, to recognise that in the engineering sort of construction sector, we are definitely lagging from a productivity perspective. I.e., there is value on the table that is relatively easy to capture if you look at it through that lens. Particularly when you bear in mind that I think we slightly kid ourselves, even with the real sort of idiosyncratic behemoth projects of work, that they're kind of completely unique. They're not. There is a lot that is, highly repeatable. So, yeah, for those three reasons, this is worth putting some intellectual kind of attention towards. And I guess, what we then sort of addressed is, look, if we're going to sort of propose a potential way of reinventing this, what are some of the principles we should keep in the back of our mind? You see the 6 here. Well, firstly, to Marc's point, no technology is going to be the panacea here. There are, huge amounts of sort of cultural behavioral issues in play. But, can you ameliorate those with technology? You've got to focus on lessons learned on, getting beyond the generic superficial to the real root cause, and such that you can kind of then understand how that renders into a forward look, now. So you've got to get, to the real sort of depth of lesson learned. Clearly, and it links to the cultural point, you've got to educate leaders, the exec, the board, as to the importance of this discipline, done well. Psychological safety, again, weaves in to this sort of cultural point. 5, it's a slightly kind of, facile point on one level, but, if you're going to build this in, you're only doing lessons learned to the betterment of your own organizational strategy. So it's got to understand what that organizational strategy is, ultimately seeking to address. And then finally, get this right, you can actually render the lesson learned discipline in and of itself, and you're constantly getting better at that discipline itself. So there were some of the principles we sort of bore in mind as we went into solution mode.
Okay, so the obvious question here is, if this is such a big problem, and it's been a problem for decades, why do we think now is a good time to address this? What's different? And there are kind of two big areas of research that we think are at the point where something can be done about this. The first is behavioral detection. The second is natural language processing. Now, just to briefly talk about why each of these is sort of the right time for this. So the behavioral detection, one of the things AI is very, very good at is detecting patterns in huge quantities of data and detecting anomalies in data. So behavioral detection, it's a lot of research is seen in e-commerce, to identify user intent, what is it someone's trying to do, what is their current activity, and this links to the relevant time point, when's the best time to record a lesson, when's the best time to play back a lesson, and detecting that, this behavioral detection is a big part of that. And then secondly, with the natural language processing, it's such a huge thing at the minute, I almost don't feel the need to justify this, but just to sort of briefly, how we got to this point with natural language processing. Up until a couple of years ago, if you wanted AI to do a specific thing, it was all about training a specific model to do a task. So you'd have things like sentiment analysis models, text classification models. If you wanted to train them, you'd get a sentiment analysis data set, say, you'd get a specific model, you'd train that model, and that model would do exactly one thing. Until last year, obviously, ChatGPT, Gemini, Llama, all those models, and the kind of theme around that was building these huge large language models that just were trained on an absolute ton of data for literally months in a warehouse full of hardware. And the theme of last year was kind of bigger, bigger models, more data, more hardware. And then this year, the theme of this year in terms of AI research has often been about kind of consolidation of that, making things more efficient instead of just throwing data at a model. And also the other thing was about integrating that into existing tools, actually bringing that to a point where people can use it. So they're the two things. That's why research, we think, is a point where something can be done about lessons learned. And this is kind of our whole end-to-end solutions we see it. I'm going to talk through each of these points in turn in a sec. But the kind of key point to make here is that this is about, obviously there's individual solutions to each of the problems we've identified, but it's really about making an end-to-end lessons learned platform that kind of takes you through that whole journey. So firstly, and very importantly, integrating lessons learned into day-to-day practice. As we keep saying, lessons learned is often just an exercise you do for an hour meeting at the beginning or at the end of a project. And the big shift we see is integrating lessons learned day to day. So using that behavioral detection to figure out what is someone actually doing, what task are they working on, is this relevant to any of the tasks they've recorded before, or have they done anything interesting that is worth recording a lesson about? Secondly, you've got the quality of lessons learned. I said before, one of the big problems, and this is sort of the almost irony of the whole thing, is when you speak to project managers, they will often say, we need to do lessons learned more, we need to do more of it. Whereas when you speak to a data scientist, it's almost the opposite, where there's almost too much noise in the data just because of how low quality a lot of lessons are. So one of the big things is improving the quality of that data, improving the quality of the lessons that get captured. And we'll show you a demo of that in a minute, but one of our potential solutions for that is using AI, kind of chatbots, to improve the quality of lessons as they get recorded. The next thing is about, once we've recorded a lesson, how do we get that out? How do we display that? How do we make it easier to search that? And this comes to the natural language processing. AI is very good these days at summarizing text, at categorizing text, at tagging it, making it easier to search for someone who wants to find lessons that are relevant to what they're currently working on. And then finally, these cultural barriers. One of the big things we see in Lessons Learned 2.0 is this whole feedback loop of if you record a lesson, let's say I've recorded a lesson on a project I'm working on, what's my motivation to do that? Well, if I record a lesson and in 6 months' time, Dom is working on some other project and he gets a little pop-up from a system saying, here's a relevant lesson, and he then provides some feedback to the system and says, oh yeah, this is really great, this has saved me, a week of work, whatever. If the system then at a later point kind of sends me a notification and says, oh, by the way, that lesson you recorded 6 months ago, that helped one of your colleagues save a week of work, well, there's my motivation. There's that feedback that I've got to continue with this discipline, to continue recording lessons.
Just on that feedback loop as well, the other benefits of the feedback loop is one is it's continually training the model, but also you can aggregate across an organisation and account for the executive to understand aggregate, how much benefit is being applied as a function of the discipline.
Yeah, kind of embed it at a strategic level for how important lessons learned is to the organisation. So again, here's our kind of summary of this solution. And again, it's a mirror of the problem statement we had at the start. You've got these behavioural barriers, we've just addressed this, the triggers about the behavioural detection, what's the right time to record a lesson, when's the most relevant time to play it back, the quality of the lesson being improved by a kind of AI interface, these technical interfaces, natural language processing to categorize and tag lessons to make them easy to search once they're in your lessons learned repository. And now, excitingly, we have a quick demo. So there's a video I'm going to show you, which is going to show this whole kind of lessons learned life cycle of recording a lesson at a relevant time. Of that lesson, we've got a chatbot interface showing that the quality of that lesson being improved, and then finally playing back that lesson at the relevant time. So we're going to show here, this is me. This is in method grid. I'm working on a project. Specifically, I'm working on stage gate, and I'm about to sign off this particular stage gate. Not 100% sure if the video's playing. Do we need to press go again? Oh, here we go. We've got him up. Nice. Brilliant. So I'm in method grid. I'm working on this rail upgrade project, and I'm about to sign off this specific stage gate within the project. And what we're going to see is when I sign off this stage gate, the system is going to detect there's something interesting about what I'm doing. Now, in this case specifically, it's going to be you can see this stage took longer than it did on similar projects. So based on all our project data within method grid, similar projects have generally gone a bit quicker in this stage. Is there a lesson learned there? Is there something I can record that will help in future projects? And so what we're going to see in a second is this chatbot interface of me recording this lesson. Before we get to that, I'm just going to quickly show you, the sort of thing that tends to happen in lessons learned these days is we just have something, a Google form, an Excel, a Word document, whatever it is, where we might just be asked to reflect on any lessons we could put in. And this is what we end up with. Something like, it was difficult to integrate the AT feeding system into existing infrastructure, doing it in phases helped. Now, this is an example of the sort of low-quality, vague lesson that we might start with, that we can't really do anything with. And what we're going to show here is through this AI chatbot interface, was gradually improving the quality of this lesson. So the AI is asking me, what challenge did I face? And I'm just going to put in that exact same thing. And what we're going to see is the AI, it kind of has two purposes. One is through a sort of question and answer dialogue, it's going to ask me for some more details, get a bit more sort of specific, actionable things. The second thing, it's going to act as a sort of gatekeeper of our lessons learned repository. So you can see here it's asking me, can you elaborate on why it was difficult? Was it due to technical complexities, mismatches in schedules, unavailability of resources, or any other reasons? So I've just said it was due to the age of the existing infrastructure. Now again, that's not very detailed. I'm sort of giving it not particularly good answers. It's not going to accept that from me. It's going to keep asking me follow-up questions. So it's asking me, can I provide some more details on what action was taken? It's asking what stage did this occur? Was it the project design stage or project delivery stage? Now, importantly here, this AI, it has access to method grid. It knows what project I'm working on. It knows what stages are in this project. So when I'm giving it vague answers, it can ask me, it can prompt me with some details. Now, the video is kind of going to speed up here because we don't want to sit here for 5 minutes watching me have this conversation. We can see now at the end of the conversation, once the AI feels like we've got to a point where there's enough detail to record a lesson, it's gonna let me save it. And so this is what we've ended up with, and it's kind of split it up into these different features. So we've got the challenge faced. The main hurdle was the difficulty in integrating the AT feeding system. It's got an action taken. We called an electrical engineering specialist. The outcome, the phase approach, it allows us to maintain 80% service levels, but the project was delayed by 2 months because we only realized this, quite late on in the process. Now, the lesson is that we need some earlier coordination with the operations team to detect any potential incompatibilities, and the recommendation for future similar projects, specifically, this kind of rail upgrade feeder system project, project managers specifically should involve the operations teams earlier. Now, in a minute, we're going to kind of jump onto the other side of this lesson retrieval part of this lessons learned. But, you can see already this is, it's a million miles away from where we were at the start, this kind of vague one sentence. There's a lot more detail here, there's a lot more context, it's a lot more actionable. And like I said, there's the two roles the AI is playing here. One is to elicit this detail from me. The other one is to act as a kind of gatekeeper of our lessons learned repository. So in this conversation, when I tried to just give it a vague, not particularly detailed answer, it wouldn't allow me to do that. It wouldn't save the lesson. It insisted that I give it some more detail. It kept asking me questions. When I gave it vague answers, it used its knowledge of the project to ask me for specifics. It suggested a couple of things. So here we go. We jump forward 6 months later. And this is going to be someone else. This isn't me anymore. It's my colleague Jody. You can see his face down there. and he's working on a different project. And he doesn't know anything about the lesson I've recorded. He doesn't know about that conversation. But as he's going about his day within method grid, when he gets to a relevant phase of this project, he gets this little pop-up saying there was a previously recorded lesson that's relevant to what he's doing. He clicks on that, and you see the system is presenting him with the lesson I recorded. Now, importantly, it's not just a copy and paste dump of the massive conversation. It's kind of the AI has extracted the key points. It's given him a bit of context. You know, the challenge was, the main challenge faced was the difficulty in integrating the AT feeding system into the age rail structure, given him a bit of context. It's given him a recommendation here that's specific to the project he's working on. If a project's involving integrating auto-transformer feeding systems into existing aged rail infrastructure, it is critical the project managers liaise with the operations team during the project design stage, which is the stage he's currently working on, in order to assess potential incompatibilities and devise an optimal construction phase plan accordingly. And then importantly, the last point here, this suggested action. The AI has said to him, do you want to add this task to this specific element of work that he's adding on, to liaise with the operations team to devise this optimal plan for the AT feeding system. And this is kind of the ultimate goal. You know, we talk about this lesson capture and lesson playback, but actually the ultimate goal of any lessons learned system is that we get to this suggested action thing where your process is updated, the lesson is incorporated into your process so that you don't need to refer back to the lesson anymore because it's just part of your playbook going forward. I think that's the end of our demo.
Thank you, Mark. So that leads us to Leap. I mean, that's essentially just us prototyping, you know, the nascent sort of full prototype. So Leap, you know, what's really important for us at MethodGrid is, as well as our sort of core business, which is, you know, the platform going out to our clients, is just this sort of R&D and innovation on the side. In fact, all of our development team essentially have every Friday off to, you know, keep us moving forward on that front. And we think we're quite sort of uniquely placed in that, you know, we've got that platform to build off of, and it does uniquely tell us, you know, what the type of person is on the platform, what kind of project they're involved in, you know, the stage of the project, the task they're in. We're quite a sort of quirky team in so much as, you know, fundamentally we're a technology team, so we have, you know, huge depth in the sort of development team, you know, with skills like, you know, Marc, and you know, wider colleagues beyond. And I think, you know, thirdly, we're just really, really lucky with the privilege we have to some of the kind of client organizations that we're working to. So I think when you put those three together, we just felt we're potentially at the nexus of being able to kind of coordinate, you know, something quite interesting here. Our hypothesis is, and we, as I say, we've done early kind of prototyping, that with 18 months, we're about 80% confident we can bring this kind of working solution to market, so it can actually be, you know, embodied in a you know, portfolio type organization. I won't bore you with the sort of, you know, how we see that playing out, but just sort of level one, you know, fundamentally, the real nub of this challenge is those different technological work streams that, you know, Marc pointed to. It's about getting all of those to work in kind of synchronicity. So effectively, we'll be going through, you know, agile sprint discipline on those different kind of components to sort of increasingly bring them and knit them together. And, you know, if successful, you know, to the kind of lessons learned 2.0, get this right, you know, you are capturing lessons learned at the apposite moment, as opposed to these really contrived points of corporate theatre at the end of projects or stages, which is fundamentally, let's be honest, you know, nonsense. But it's contemporary in the moment, as is the retrieval, importantly. Effectively, you're behaviourally detecting and, you know, waving a digital hand, so we think we've got something that is, you know, highly relevant for you now, today. Importantly, you know, we use NLP intelligently to have that kind of Socratic dialogue, so the quality of the actual lessons learned are of sufficient granularity. Yeah, all of that through this sort of, you know, let's say behavioural, you know, nudging, a new kind of interface, essentially empowered search. Yeah, you weave that all together, particularly with that feedback point as well. I'll really emphasise that. That feedback point is key because it trains the model. It also aggregates data across an organisation. and gives the ability to sort of give little, dopamine hit points to the person that originally put it in, that it's actually played back in the future, to somebody's benefit. So, in total, we feel that the theoretical benefits of lessons learned that have been nothing other than that for, the last, 2 or 3 decades, this really can radically change, and measurably so. That's the key point. We can actually measure the impact of what this new discipline could be. So that brings us, we're calling it LEAP. We are very fortunate with some of our partners, clients, so Network Rail, Environment Agency with their flood defense program are very keen to take part in terms of opening up their sort of data sets as well. And we're looking for 1 or 2 other industry partners as well. We're in active conversations with some as well. And to be honest, we don't want to make it too big. We actually want this to be a relatively kind of contained collaboration, just so that it's kind of we can kind of keep it in control. And then finally, through Marc's PhD is at Durham University, so via Durham's AI sort of faculty, and also Bath University, which is where we're largely HQ'd. So it's a bit of a tie-up of public sector clients, private sector clients, industry, and ourselves. I think that's really where we sort of leave it. If you're interested, and it just piques your curiosity, we've got, you can download some of it via the QR code, but we've got a whole load of just 1-page summaries of that, just like an A3 summary. And if you want something more material, there's a whole white paper which expands on what Marc and I have just described. There's a few here, otherwise just come to our stand in the hall if you want to pick up the full white paper. Yeah, I think that just leads us to any questions.
Thanks for the presentation. When it comes to recording the lessons learned, what challenges have you faced in terms of people reluctant to record the lesson, because there could be contractual issues and various issues that are related to people, organization, that kind of challenges. So what's your strategy in overcoming that so that this could be a success?
Yeah, no, great question. So again, the solution isn't anywhere near being deployed yet. We're about to enter the sort of the development of it. But I think what we've anticipated is, and actually we've had a lot of conversations with our clients about the sort of what's the right balancing point here, because there are multiple layers to this. I mean, one is just that kind of cultural dynamic of, do I get beaten up if I kind of own up to some mistake point, which again, is not insignificant. But the one you're touching on is more, well, we have proprietary, confidential, commercial information we don't necessarily want to share. So the really, really important point on that is, what we are already doing this actually is developing natural language models that are completely data contained for the client organization, is one layer on that. It's called, source grounded, RAG models, where effectively on top of your foundational model, you're building your proprietary model, but clearly with no data leakage. That's a really fundamental point for us. Our clients have their own protected bubble. What's interesting though, when we speak to a lot of our clients, what they will say is, look, there is definitely aspects that will be in that category, but actually we do want to put stuff out to the betterment of the industry as well. So fundamentally it doesn't matter what organization you're in, you should learn from what we've learned. So what we'll also have to crack is the categorization of that as well. But I think the default will be it's completely proprietary, because clearly that's fundamental.
This is just a simple question, I think, but from what you've shown me there, can you do different languages in that? Like, is it easy? I presume it is.
You mean like, could we do it in Spanish, for example?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'm saying this, I haven't actually tried it, but I don't see why not, is my answer, yeah.
I was just wondering, the current model that you've already evolved,
natural language processing now is at a point where, doing things in different languages is, as long as it's a sufficiently big language, I'm sure there's some very niche languages that sort of not many people speak that would struggle with. But for most major languages, I would be surprised if it wasn't.
Okay, thanks.
I mean, at a simple level, just in our platform now, clients have, wanted to move their playbooks into different languages, and they've just done that through our existing AI just to literally render this in Dutch, which is
Yeah,
in Dutch. So
yeah.
that's a relatively facile,
Sure,
part of
yeah.
the whole thing.
Good. Thanks.
Yeah. There's one at the front, I think.
Just briefly, actually, by the way, just with the different languages thing, I think there's also an opportunity there, for existing lessons learned repositories that are already in different languages to kind of bring those to present those to people who don't necessarily speak the language it's originally in. There's a big opportunity there as well with existing repositories.
It's a statement and then likely about 14 questions, but I'll just try and ask one or two. It is in reflection, and I know, Russell, we've lightly touched on all this. This is like the holy grail of solving this, but it never occurred to me that you really needed to have a method grid to actually be able to do lessons learned in a meaningful way. Because if you didn't have anything with that structure and land, sorry if I'm not stating back to you that to lay lessons learned on top, it's always doomed to failure. So I'd never really kind of cottoned on that you've got to have something like you've got your base and then add this in. And that's why I think maybe a lot of the other lessons learned initiatives fail, because there isn't that landscape for it to fit within. But my question would be, I've been involved with a business where they were using small short video, very, very simple platform. Have you looked at any other means of inputting?
Yes, thank you. That's a great question, and yes, we have. I'm glad you've given me the opportunity to talk about it, in fact. Yeah, absolutely. Recording, we've got a prototype of just recording some audio, where, when you get to that chat interface, there's just an option to record it as audio, and you can give, a quick 30-second, minute, you just talk. And yeah, the kind of AI then takes over, summarizes it, categorizes it, all the rest of it, or yeah, indeed in video format. Because I think one of the big kind of challenges, we wanted to make it as easy as possible to record lessons, and that might be the case that it's not someone in an office sitting at a laptop. It might be someone who's on a site on their phone, and they just want to quickly go, by the way, here's something for later, and that just gets put in the system, categorized, all the rest of it, translated into natural language that can then be kind of treated at the same level as all the rest of the repository. Yeah, no, absolutely, that's something we've looked at. Yeah.
Which, dare I say, takes you out of the white collar in towards the blue collar as well, which is where some in Australia would try to get the idea of giving people the chance to pick up their phone and respond to a question that another superintendent has just put out or whatever. No, I could ask. I know I said I'll come to
But Donnie, on your first point, we genuinely do feel, as I said before, sort of really fortunate in that we have the base of our platform and therefore we have this sort of understanding. However, architecturally going into this innovation, we'll be building it in a standalone way. So, it really naturally builds on a platform like MethaGrid, but, you needn't be a MethaGrid user per se to harness the module.
Thanks. It's a fascinating talk, guys. Just curious, what's the sort of forward vision for when you get a lot of noise in the system and there's a whole load of lessons learned and it starts just throwing out a lot of information at people that may or may not be entirely relevant?
Yeah, so I think a big kind of challenge there is the pre-processing step, filtering through any existing repositories to kind of filter out all of the meaningless stuff. And I think there are two aspects of that. One is duplication. There might just be a lot of lessons that are kind of duplicated across numerous different things and kind of unifying them into here's the one lesson. The other one, is kind of filtering out the noise. One of the things we've looked at with that is kind of taking existing data and using AI to kind of try and rate it for how detailed it is. How valuable is this lesson? And then, filtering out the ones that aren't necessarily that valuable. I think this is a big challenge, especially in sort of big businesses that have, got decades-long repositories of lessons learned that, you don't want... I mean, firstly, you want to get the high-quality ones out. But also, from a user experience point of view, you don't want a system just spamming you every 10 seconds of, here's something relevant to what you're doing that's, from 20 years ago and not relevant anymore. Yes, that's definitely the.
But that's going to be a big part of the sort of prototype development is getting that balance right. Yeah. But we do envisage that feedback loop. If you can imagine at a simple level, something plays back and you get a 1 to 10. 10 might be you fundamentally saved this project from going down. 1 might be that was as useful as watching a cat video. And in the middle, you've got, well, that actually saved me, you know, a chunk of time this week, you know. But, you know, there will be some ones and twos in the early days as the model sort of trains itself in as well. But that's a key part of the ever-improving efficacy of it.
And when we talk about the natural language processing categorization, you know, one aspect of the categorization is what's this about? You know, which project is this relevant to? Another dimension of the categorization is what's the quality of this? You know, is it a high quality lesson or is it just sort of noise? Yeah, that's definitely a huge part of it. Yeah, absolutely.
Are you building into it we do a lot of lessons identified. We're not that good at doing lessons learnt from the identification.
Yeah.
Are you building in, this is a lesson that has been put in many times and it's still being put in, we ain't learning it.
No, exactly.
So it brings it to the fore for a lesson to be learnt.
Absolutely. I think that, again, a part of the innovation development is so crucial because it's part of that, you know, that Socratic dialogue that you can get the sort of NLP to sort of facilitate has really got to try and unpack that. But what's behind that is what is the real data architecture of what it is we're trying to capture. And, you know, I think getting that data architecture right to facilitate the, you know, the NLP kind of dialogue is to solve that because, you know, I totally agree that's right at the nub of it.
Yeah.
You know, getting away from platitudinal surface level kind of observations to why, what was the fundamental thing.
Yeah, I think the kind of last point of the demo we had before where, you know, here's a recommendation, here's how to update your process, incorporate this lesson into your process. Because yeah, that's the end goal really, isn't it? You want to learn the lesson. You want it to be part of your process so that people don't keep recording the same lessons because they don't need to anymore. Because yeah, it's the end goal, I suppose, is everyone's forgotten that this was ever a lesson that was learned because it's just part of what you do now.
I think we've overrun, yeah.
Yeah, we have a little bit.
Have we overrun? I think so, yeah. So we should, if anybody's interested, we'll understand just as you go back into the hall, and we've got a whole load more white papers. Yeah, please come and have a chat to Marc and I, if that's of intrigue. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.